All right, so good day, everyone. This is Marcus Tornella again, talking Trinidad and Tobago football. And today I have the pleasure of having a conversation with Leslie Tiger Fitzpatrick. A lot of the a lot of people would know the name, but for probably some of the younger who don't know, we would get into that and you kind of explain who he is. And the whole idea again is to get perspectives from people who are able to help Trinidad and Tobago football, but are not at this point for whatever reason. We would get into that. Um, so yeah, because Leslie, I'd like to say thanks for your time. Because I try to stick to time also, I would start with the questions that I ask you. And as always, I ask the first question: Who is? So who is Leslie Fitzpatrick?
Yeah, first and foremost, thanks for having me. I know we've been kind of going back and forth and figuring out a time that we could
Right. Yeah.
sit down. And as we said, it's fluid where this could be the first of a lot of conversations, I'm sure. And certainly with the schedule as it is right now, yeah, it gets hectic. But thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be able to speak um, anything and all things Trinidad and Tobago football when they have the opportunity to.
Yeah.
Yeah, who's Leslie Fitzpatrick, Tiger. Just another boy, man, another youth that came out of Trinidad and Tobago who had all the dreams and aspirations like so many do, wanting to find a way to make his passion a profession,
Right.
and then ultimately his profession a career. And I was blessed to be able to do that at a significant enough level on the field. But certainly now I think off the field I'm really starting to trend in directions that I would say comes closer to where the potential was, even on the field that wasn't realized. Certainly off the field, I hope to ensure that I maximize on the opportunities and the windows that I have now to go into that space. Grew up in families from Trinity, mom, dad, two sisters.
Okay.
Grew up in I'd say they were in Trinity, Orange Grove, and we all worked and went to school in Port of Spain, and so I used to want to be based more there, and at first because of the traffic, and even back then a little bit of traffic.
Right.
Went to live with my grandmother for a few years in Mover and Coconut Drive, and humble beginnings again, being able to be exposed to certain elements of society at that point who were very, very also influential in ensuring that I stayed on the straight and narrow despite all the other things happening in the community, because they saw it as between the family and them somebody who had a chance, and they
Okay.
didn't want
Okay.
they didn't want me to fall into some of the same um, problems and the same distractions that, let's say, you could fall into living in those communities. And then my family, we were able to secure apartment in Woodbrook. So
Right.
throughout most of my life, from Standard Five until I left for university, I grew up and lived in Woodbrook, and I was part of Jar Lily White's coaching school, which was right around the Savannah, so I could walk or ride my bike. So even if my family went back to Trinity, I always had the ability to get to practices and to do what I needed to. And then I would say national team started around U14s, all the way through to the senior team.
Mm.
I went to Europe. I was fortunate to be identified through something House of Dread was doing actually. I was fortunate to be identified as a top talent myself. At that point, Angus Eve, Sherland David, I think Stokely went as well, Stokely Mason. Um, we went to Rhoda JC, those boys on the senior level and me on the academy level, and I was able to secure uh, academy contract with them when I was around 15 or 16 years old. Again,
Okay.
like the rules now with FIFA and stuff, you needed to be in school or have something that could show that you would have something to fall back on, and that kind of didn't work out for a while. But I was back and forth for about a year and a half, playing and developing in Holland. At the
Hmm.
same time, Brent Ryan was at Newcastle United, and it was interesting to see how we how our worlds were mirroring each other.
Right.
Ultimately, once that didn't happen, my family was very, very high on education and ensuring that we had the base that we needed to be successful in life. And so the schools, the colleges, universities were calling, like crazy. And I was always like, no, 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 I go in pro.
Yeah.
But that first dose of reality in Europe, where football wasn't about friendships anymore and about teams, teammates and camaraderie and all, it was cutthroat. It was,
Right.
this is, if you want to make it, you're an outsider and you need to be 6 times better than our boys daily. And it was a strong dose of reality where, you weren't really playing for fun anymore.
Yeah.
And schoolboy football, for as great as it was in our time, it was a next level of, if you don't show up on a particular day, or you think you show up, like I scored 6 or 7 goals against a village team one day, and the next day 2 goals against I think it was PSV or somebody, and they were still upset because I didn't score six. And they're like, it's not realistic that you'll score 6 or 7, but your
Right.
mentality has to be that you want to score 6 or 7 every single day. And
Right.
so, as a 15, 16-year-old, hearing that when you think you win a game and success and 2 goals, and back in our day in the newspaper and you're on TV or you're on Sports Sunday or whatever it is, yeah, it was different. Anyway, fast forward, and I had Columbia University, Ivy League school. The coach came down, and we had a lot of schools coming down. And so you had the likes of Brent and Darren. We sent those guys going to UConn, and we had guys going out to James Madison, and Southern Connecticut had their pool of players coming through, and College of Charleston, lots of schools, the Florida schools, USF and Tampa. But
Yeah.
Columbia set itself apart being Ivy League, and with my family's desire to ensure that we had the highest level of education, it was a no-brainer for me. I put them through headaches. I didn't want to admit that I was going to go. I still was holding on to that going pro
Right.
thing
Right. Right.
right till till the end. But then I went and I spent my 4 years there and graduated with a double major in economics and political science. And unbeknownst to me at that point in time, it's been one of the best decisions of my life, because it's what set me apart in a lot of spaces. The ability to have that education, that alumni base, that um, just the capacity for intellectual thought and challenging you on levels where it's not about regurgitating what you learn in a book or whatever, but actually influencing thought.
Yeah.
And those 4 years were really impactful. Made lifelong friendships there as well. And then once I was done, that was the deal with my parents: get your degree, and then you could go back to what you want. And so
Yeah.
immediately I went back to football, and had a good career, as I would say, 10 years. Journeyman in some ways, shape and form. Years in the MLS, years in the A League, year in China, Sweden, Puerto Rico for a little bit in their club Champions League stint. Yeah, Germany, Holland. I was everywhere and anywhere that I could chase the dream, and I
Right.
was able to do fairly well in that capacity. And then once I went back home, my dad was sick, so I went back home and spent the last year, so year and a half, with 2 clubs down in Trinidad and Tobago. And that's kind of where I started to realize some of the things. You'd see it a little bit with the national team, but the national team, we were just dipping in and out, so you didn't really have to deal with a lot of the hardships and the challenges on a day to day. But moving back to Trinidad and Tobago,
Mm-hmm.
and playing, and seeing the standards that we thought we had, and knowing the standards, where we always say, the US and these guys, they're not as talented, but they certainly put the work in, they put the infrastructure in, and there's a
Yeah.
reason why we don't beat them. We say we're better than them, but there's a reason why we don't beat them, right?
Right. Right.
Consistently,
Right. Right. Yeah.
and so that almost kind of soured my taste a little bit, because I had players, almost I became like this Pied Piper and pariah for the league, because I was always fighting the league, for players' rights. But players still at that point in time refused to join a players' union because they were fearful of being blacklisted and like all the things. So
Okay.
we didn't have the power to really effect change because we weren't unified. But they certainly, on an individual basis, would ask you to help them and to go fight. And again, like, I was never one that is anti-establishment or anything. I wanted to always make sure we could work together and be collaborative. But
Yeah.
sometimes the owners had all the power because they were the owners and on the board of directors, which is serious conflict of interest.
True.
But I also had, Dexter Skeen as the CEO of the Pro League, and Dexter was very impactful and influential in my going to Columbia University because he went to Columbia University, and so
Okay. Okay.
he was the one that kind of mentioned me to my coach, and my coach
Hmm.
started recruiting, and so Dexter and I had always had a very, very good relationship and the ability to speak on a level that was based on logic and not on emotion, and so when certain things weren't going the ways that they were supposed to, we could have a candid conversation, and then there was a arbitration board that was um, um, independent. And whenever we would get to that point, then the decisions would usually go in the way they were supposed to. So, but it
Right.
grinded
Right.
on me. It grinded on me, and I was coming to the end, and and I probably could have carved 2 or 3 more years out, but certainly with my dad's passing and the mental strife and everything,
Yeah.
I decided to stop in 2012.
Right.
And stop chasing and start looking at what was next because I'd started to have my family. I had three of my kids by that point, and yeah, I needed something that would become more sustainable, and went through a midlife crisis like everybody, I think, when they retire from football, at least at 30
Right.
something years old. And coaching was a natural segue, just
Hmm.
because I had done it a little bit while I was playing in the USL, which was the A League back then. The money wasn't great, and so you would find second and third streams of revenue and income, and coaching became one of mine when I was in Atlanta. And I
Okay.
was good because I could connect with the youth, and over the years I kept developing myself in that way. And then once I got into it, I started in not Rochester, in Buffalo, New York, with a club. I was sponsored by Deodora, and so Deodora, I used to go around to clubs in Western New York, Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo, doing appearances. And
Hmm.
one of the guys I became really friendly with, Joe. He asked me if I could come and be a director in his club, but without the director money. And so at that point in time, I had a very strong connection to Toronto. My daughter, the third one, she was born there, and so
Okay.
I was going back and forth. It was only an hour and 30 minutes or so. So I
Yeah.
got a job in Toronto as well as a director there, and I started to realize quickly I wanted to go in that space. The coaching was one thing, but there was serious barriers and ceilings with coaching, being a minority
Yeah.
person. And we know that across the globe, not just in North
True.
America, but in England and in Europe. And you don't see us being represented in a lot of spaces. And
True.
and so
True.
as with Columbia University, as with everything, I was like, well, what is my USP? What's my unique selling proposition? And it was education, and it was the ability to like navigate myself in certain rooms, and just to be able to get access to that. So I went ahead and I did my master's degree in sport administration as well from the University of
Right.
Miami, and then I did my badges. I was lucky again because of the career I had that I could start as high as a B, and so I started with the B and the A, and then now I was able to progress myself. And in Toronto, again, very far ahead of where we are in Trinidad and Tobago, but still
Hmm.
a few years behind the US. So I spent 7 years there and then realized I needed to make a change
Right.
back to the US. Um, for my kids and for everything, and though it was hard because now you started to deal with more separation from your kids, and that's the
Yeah.
sacrifice to be able to move in the direction I needed to professionally. I had to move away, and so I came back down. I was able to get an executive director role at a club in Blacksburg, Virginia,
Hmm.
and then through that time, and then COVID and balancing that, the league, the MLS started to realize I was back in a space, and they kept approaching me about getting into their ecosystem. And for a while, I was a little bit, because I knew how it was as a player, and there was a little bit of hesitancy on that cutthroat nature, and then started to meet a few people, have conversations, and realize like that was the next step and the next evolution of where I wanted to go,
Okay.
and was being courted by a few clubs, and New York Red Bulls, at the end of the day, was probably the most decisive in making a decision quickly after a day interview. And
Right.
So much so I was like, hey, I need to come and see the place and see the people, and I don't want to just take a job blindly. And
Right.
I talked to the league, and they said, yeah, with Red Bulls and who they are as a club, as a brand, their global reach, multi-club organization and system, they would like, don't turn them down. And it was probably the best decision I've made in my post-playing career. Easily
Okay.
the best decision I would say that I made in my post-playing career, and my trajectory from that time has been, in my mind, astronomical when you look back, and certainly there's still more levels to go.
Yeah.
But what people don't see is the grind, and when you talk about who Leslie or Tiger is, he's a grinder that you would of magnanimous proportions that nobody sees, and my work ethic and my ability to just push and go is what I think sets me apart in a lot of spheres. And
Okay.
I guess I do it both sides of it. I socialize as hard as I work, and people have respect for that, because when it's time to work, I work, and
Yeah.
that's who I am. And it's all about what motivates me, and his family. I
Yeah.
spend a lot of time away from my kids, way too much time, and that's the hardest part of what I do. And
Right.
certainly, my mom and my sisters, and my partner, and like any of it is, you try to do your best to,
Yeah.
to, to be there and to provide for them, and certainly the sacrifices, you hope in the end were worth it.
Okay. Okay. So looking at the questions that I sent you, and that kind of touched probably three or four of them. So we kind
Yeah,
of we kind of have those answered.
yeah,
So knowing where you are now, I was looking and I think I saw in April you were named as head of player pathway for Red Bulls. What exactly does that mean?
yeah. So I started off as the head of talent ID and recruitment in the academy, and
Right.
my task was to bring in the very best players into the Red Bulls academy. Because our Red Bull New York is structured, and Red Bull globally, Salzburg, Leipzig, Bragantino now in Brazil, and Omiya in Japan.
Hmm.
With touch points now, we have part ownership with Leeds United and part ownership with Paris FC. But the
Okay.
crux of when Salzburg was kind of conceptualized, and certainly Leipzig and Red Bull New York, was development through the academy and through youth. And so when you start looking at, you have buying clubs, the biggest ones in the world, your Chelsea's and your Man United's and your Liverpool's and your Real Madrid's and Barcelona's, and then Barcelona is that hybrid that's still a development club as well too.
Hmm.
Um, you have your developing clubs that sell, your Ajaxes and your Leipzigs, your Salzburgs, who are that space. Dortmund, they're in that realm, and they play Champions League, and but their big revenue generation a lot of times comes from sailor players.
Selling players. Yeah.
Yeah, the French clubs, and the outside of PSG, and certainly the Portuguese clubs, and you have that, and we've kind of fallen into that realm.
Okay.
And so a big part of development becomes, how do you move the players through from the academy into the second team into the first team for ROI globally. And
Hmm.
so almost by in a very, very natural way, my role started to evolve into second team, and some second team recruitment as well, and second team player movement, because the academy boys were the ones who were going into the second team a lot, and
Right.
we started to sign. We had a good generation of 2008 and 2009 born players, and we have seven of them signed pros right now, and a couple more, and then we have another generation
Nice.
of them. And
Yeah.
so, two of those boys I just went with, they played a game against Man City's under 20s on Wednesday with
Hmm.
Leipzig as guest players.
Hmm.
They're already with our first team, and they probably would factor in significantly this year. But there was a natural, trajectory into second team and their activities and their football. And one of the things that people say my superpower is the people, and being able to like really motivate people and get them into the best version of themselves, while doing that as well for myself.
Hmm.
Affecting that also helps me to become the best version of myself. And so I signed a short 18-month contract originally with the club, and then I was gambling on myself a little bit, where I was like, I wanted my trajectory to be into a sporting director track or head of football track or a GM, depending on what your club setup is.
Yeah.
And I wasn't so sure about the talent ID and recruitment title, and they kind of explained to me in the European model, which I kind of knew a little bit from my time there, that you're the ones that's building the rosters and dealing with the parents or the agents, and you're setting up the teams and all that, and roster construction and stuff, which essentially is what your sporting director does at the next level.
Yeah.
Dealing a little bit with the budgets and the player movement and acquisitions. So me alongside the academy director Sean McCafferty and the academy manager Ryan Brooks, we kind of worked as a three-headed monster to take the academy to where we needed to, along with the coaching staff and some of the administrators. And I was fortunate again, hired by Jochen Schneider, and at that time it was Dennis Hamlet, who then became Julian de Guzman as our sporting director. And Julian and I had a long history from our playing days, where he was Canada's captain for a long time, and me living in Toronto and having a lot of mutual friends.
Yeah.
They saw so much potential, and the idea was that they wanted to move me through and get me more closer to the professional team and running that. And we went through way too long of a negotiation to figure out what that would look like. But
Yes.
once we settled on that player pathway role, it then became now more control of the second team, being almost like their pseudo sporting director, where I oversaw the staff, orchestrated player movement on a daily to weekly basis from academy into second team and first team down into second team, when guys like your Roll Mitchells and stuff needed to get playing time because they
Yeah.
hadn't. We do a minute tracker to make sure. And you look at the best players in the world, the young players, they usually have to average about 3,000 to 4,500 minutes a year to continue their development at the accelerated level. And we were
Okay.
finding we were losing track of how many minutes our boys were playing, and maybe they were getting 1,500 to 2,000, and so you fall behind when you look at what the Lamine Yamals and some of these young Jude Bellingham at this age, what type of football they were playing and the amount of minutes. So
Right.
we became very intentional about making sure on a weekly basis we tracked minutes and needed to push players, whether it was a second team contracted player that had an academy, still had academy eligibility. Sometimes you
Mm-hmm.
would send them to play games with the academy, and that wasn't
Right.
a demotion. It was about making sure
Playing
that you
time.
get
Yeah.
minutes,
Yeah.
and same with a first team to a second team and national team minutes and all of it. And we have a very, with our data group and all of that, a very strategic way in how we work. And so I was tasked with overseeing that.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle of the season, we went from Ibra Sakaya, who moved up to the first team, to Michael Bradley. And that became another masterstroke for us from a club level, just on my ability to now work with Michael and evolve what we were doing even more with the knowledge that he had coming from training. He and Julian both had extensive playing careers. Julian at Olympique Marseille and Deportivo La Coruña and in the Bundesliga,
Right.
and Michael with Mönchengladbach and Herenveen, and then with AS Roma, and then both had success with TFC in the league. And so now another meeting of the minds in plotting how we would move this forward with Jochen at the head of the pyramid, and then obviously Mario Gomez out in Germany, and then hiring Jurgen Klopp, which has been
Mm-hmm.
another, I would say, masterstroke for the club, because now it's evolving our playing style, where we had Ralph Rangnick and a great working philosophy with how we would play and the ability to press and counter press and all that. And Jurgen kind of took that and evolved it at Liverpool, and now bringing it back into our ecosystem now, where we also have a philosophy of on the ball. And Sean was a Barca Academy in the US Academy director, so he already had a philosophy with what we would do on the ball,
Okay.
with the ball. And so now, again, just kind of how we collaborate and how we meet and how we talk through strategizing philosophies, methodologies of play, how do we want to align our tactics all the way through from the academy up to the first team. And so I was kind of like in the middle of that as part of the epicenter of making that machine work. And then
Yeah.
it all came together with us winning the title with the second team last year, the first team getting to the final in MLS and not winning, but that served as a catalyst for this. And
Yeah.
then now managing that to the point that we were not only success for us coming from the academy isn't really always titles. Titles are a byproduct of it because we want to teach them how to win and how to do that well.
Yeah.
But it's really moving players up through the ecosystem and then getting a return on investment. But when you start doing
Mm-hmm.
that and the young players start playing at higher levels and getting the minutes, then as a byproduct, you're going to find wins. And we won
Right.
in the academy, and then now we won with the second team with the youngest, second youngest they say, but in terms of playing personnel, the youngest group in the league, 18.5 was the average age, and you're playing
Okay. Okay.
in a men's league. You're playing with,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so that was great. And now just working again, I can maybe in the next interview I'll be able to give you what the new title and role would be, but working with the club on
Okay.
that now, where I would start now moving up and overseeing some of the first team stuff as well. So first team, second team, kind of moving away from the academy a little bit. But
Okay.
that's been the journey, and certainly the success, as I said, has been great in helping me, and also the trust of having, your Jokins and now Julian's the head of football because Jokin had to return to Germany, and
Mm-hmm.
your Sam Goldbergs and Sean's, as we said, and now Sebastian Hauser was my head of scouting when I first came in. He's moved on, and now Jimmy Mulligan's there. And so yeah, we have a great group, and one of the things that we've said, Michael's moved up to first team coach now. So again, having that relationship with him with the second team and working together makes it easy for us when we move into the first team realm. A lot of
Yeah.
challenges, different space, different results do matter much more.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And so we'll see how it goes. The one thing we say is we're gonna go for it. We're gonna be young, we're gonna be dynamic, we're gonna test the boundaries across the board. And for the players who played with the second team have moved into first team contracts.
Okay. Nice.
7 of the academy boys now have contracts going into second team, and so yeah, we keep working and we keep evolving, and we take it as best as we can.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds good. Um, so I want to shift the conversation to Trinidad and Tobago,
Yeah,
obviously, because so where we are. We spoke a little bit offline. So my question to you is, if given an opportunity to work in the TTFA in any capacity, how would you be able to help with the experience and the knowledge that you have to help the Trinidad and Tobago football setup?
yeah. I mean, as you said, we kind of started talking about this offline, and one of the things I would say is, at this point, at this juncture in our history as a country, small population, 1.3, 1.4 million, whatever you want to say it is,
Yeah.
excluding the diaspora outside, we have probably the most amount of talent in positions of influence in the global football ecosystem.
Yeah.
If you talk about media and you start looking at your Shakas, if you talk about in Europe, we had Brent Ryan with FIFA for a bit. On the coaching side, we have college and University of Tampa, Maurice Lorignard, and Stony Brook, Ryan Anatole, and Brent Dookie, and guys in Missouri, and Jeremy Schwartz and stuff. And on youth club level, you have your Colin Rocks with BVB, Dortmund's academy in the US. In the MLS, on our executive side, you have myself now. Within the academy coaching space, you have your Julius Jameses, and we have so many people in positions where we are not even scratching the surface of tapping into.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is one of the biggest travesties that I have, along the way. And because you grew up in football and you knew of the playing side and the pioneers, right? Your Steve Davids and Archibalds and Gally Cummingses and Figaro's, Sedley Josephs, and these guys. And then you move into your next generation, where we would say maybe that with your Clayton Morrises and the strike squad generation, right? And
Mm-hmm.
a locally based group, but also with some David Knackett's kind of touching in there, and Dexter Skeens and at points, and and Anton Cornelius. But that group was primarily local based with your Hudson Charleses and Kerry Jamesons and Claytons and Leonsons and those guys. And then you move into that generation now with the Leonson and Clint Marcel and Russell and Dwight and Shaka, and what evolved then into that Soca Warriors generation, where then
Yeah.
now you had with my group in now kind of taking a little bit of that battle, which Carlos Edwards and Jason Scotland's, Kelvin Jackson, Denzel Theobald's, moving forward, and then Brent Rhyme and Marlon Oasis and these guys, and then going into the Cohen Gemmots and Arnold Dwarkas and Gary Glasgow's, and then you move forward into the next one, which you start getting at like Jovan Jones and Kevin Molino, and then we start, now it's like, all right, you could name off, between the Pioneers and that group with the Strike Squad and that group then with the Soca Warriors, where we had players playing at the highest level of the game, in the
Yeah.
top 5 leagues and in the US and stuff. And then it started to dwindle. And not that talent wasn't there, but where we were. And maybe it coincided a little bit with Mr. Warner's kind of downfall, or what you say, but where he was as one of the top 2 or 3 people in FIFA, and for all the good and the bad and however you want to see it, we
Yeah.
certainly had opportunities and access that we had never had before. And so
Hmm.
now we were able to take that and run with it. And so many of us have built professional careers out of it on the field and now, as you see, off the field. But
Yeah.
less and less we have players going into the top leagues. And the question is why? And when you look at the local football scene and how it's been, the dearth of continuing education and ability to stay with best practices globally from an infrastructural perspective, from a developmental perspective. Again, when you look at the people who were developing talent back in the day, I always give my most credit to Jarley White and to Hayden Martin.
Hmm.
Certainly, Bertil Sinclair had a part to play in my development, and all the coaches, the Keith Lacroix and stuff, that I was able to be with. But you also had
Yeah.
coaching schools, and you had Kenny Lai had one, and Dion Lafoucault had one, and Alvin Cornell, the Alcons had one, and you would see them where they were like hotbeds of the best players. Now I think Anthony Sherwood might have one, and I don't even know how many of them. I know there's a few, and I don't, but I know clubs, Ball Blasters, and then Trendsetter Hawks with Dada, they're still around and people are still doing things, but we're almost still doing it in the way that we were doing it when I was growing up. And that in no way, shape, or form is a recipe for what modern football looks like in player development.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
what the national team, how they're structured and how they do it with the camps. Like club football is almost non-existent at youth level, which is insane, right? Schoolboy
Hmm.
football has always had its place, but schoolboy football isn't a developmental, as far as
No.
I know or understand,
No.
platform to be able to like really hone in on talent. And we've tried. We can't take a US model and say we're going to replicate it in Trinidad. It's totally different, right? But you can take certain aspects of it and cater it to yours. We can't take an Ajax model, but we can take certain aspects of it and cater it. We can't take a Real Madrid or a Dortmund, but we could take the best pieces of those places and model it to what works for us. And I
Yeah.
think that is where we've been falling short. And so back to your original question, would I want to help? Do I want? Of course. Like I said, the biggest travesty for me is working in the space that I am and given the place that I am and helping players of all kinds of nationalities and creeds and colors and stuff outside of Trinidad and wanting to give back to Trinidad so much and not being able to. One, because the challenge, would I take myself right now where I'm at from a professional standpoint and leave and go back to Trinidad and Tobago football right now? No, I would not.
Mm.
We've seen the challenges over the years with being able to be compensated on time or at all, being able to, have the infrastructure and the things that you want and you need. Getting that is sometimes pulling teeth. From a
Yeah.
structural standpoint, I went home and I was watching the 20s and the 17s, and you're seeing this next generation, and you're seeing, you hear the names, um, Natty James and Lindell Sween and Adassa Richardson, and I watch the 17s and the Satadid and Caden Trastriel, and you see Findy Freitas and names, players, and you're watching it. But when we look at what we're doing off the field to support, I had the guy who's the head of Chelsea's education. He came down with his son. We had, myself there. You had people who are now coming from these ecosystems that again want to help. A guy
Hmm.
from Arsenal's academy just reached out to me, Javon. Hey, should I go back? How I could go back? People reach out, But I
Yeah.
don't think we help ourselves in. Nobody going to beg the association to help them. We're there.
Yeah.
We want to offer our services. In what capacity? That's a discussion. I've always
Hmm.
said I would help consult. I would help do anything to give back and to show I'm a willingness to send my expertise. But it has to work now with my schedule and my timeline because I know where to support my kids and my family. I know where that paycheck is coming from. If
Right.
I
Yeah.
said
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
give
Yeah.
that up for Trinidad football, like I don't know. Would I be technical director of Trinidad football? Maybe. People ask me about being prime minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah, I've always thought about that too, right? Like because of the education and political science background and economics. But again, when you get into this space, you want to make sure that you're going with the right people. I always look at what we've done in Red Bull, and you realize it's about the people you surround yourself with. You put the
Correct.
right
Yeah.
people in a room where everybody puts aside ego. You're going to have people that want to push their agenda, but you also have to put aside your ego to get to a commonality of what is the right thing. And when we go in that direction, it's not a walk out the room and, yeah, I didn't say that because you're kind of hedging your bets. If it don't go right, you could say, well, I didn't agree with it. No,
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
you could agree to disagree in that room, and you could be as vociferous as you want to be, and you challenge and you check and you do everything. But when you come to a decision, we have to go at it holistically. And I don't think that we're in that space and that place yet. I think when you look at the conditions of where the boys are, the home of football was a good idea and concept, but what we have turned that into and the stadium and how, how they bathrooms that don't work, like that's madness, right? And I don't know if that's government, I don't know if that's TTFA, I don't funding. There's no coincidence that in our best period of football from a successful standpoint in going to a World Cup was it coincided with the most amount of funding we've received as a football association because you
Yeah.
need the money, you need the things to be able to put things in place. But if I was a businessman and you come and ask me for $4 million now and I have no accountability for where it's going, you're not going to
That's
get
it.
my money.
That's
No
the
chance.
problem. That is the
No
problem
chance,
right now.
right? And across the board in Trinidad that and Tobago, I would say that is the biggest problem is there has to be accountability, there has to be transparency in
Yeah.
where funding goes and what it's used for. And everybody will still make their money. The part of it is you feel like, oh, I have to take and I have to do this. But the more you take on your pocket and stuff, is the less that you're going to have sustainability in a model. The more that you can
True.
show transparency and you can get paid, you can get paid, but you're going to have to work. And when you work and you know that you're going to be compensated for your work, there's more of a desire to work because
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know that you're being compensated. And trust me, I've gone into more contracts than not where I wasn't compensated at the value that I needed to be or wanted to be. But I knew I had to make the sacrifice to go in and prove myself and work to then be
Right.
compensated down the future. And again, we could look at is that right when you look at the nepotism that happens and the ease of which other people get their access and their ability to get jobs and yeah, but it might not change, and if it's gonna change, it mightn't change in my time. So I can't be concerned with that. All I could be concerned is what I could do to then elevate myself to where I need to be to then help others behind me. That is my
Yeah.
passion, helping the
Yeah.
youth. Because I was one of them. I was one of those boys. But when I go to the boys and they're asking me, "Hey, coach, like we waiting for food for like 2 hours after a training session, or we doing that?" Like it's madness, Like it's still not in the place that we need it to be, and it's not a I wouldn't minimize it to say it's a easy fix or a quick fix, but it is fixable. It is attainable. It it needs to be not a crab in barrel mentality for us to get there.
Right.
And
True.
right now we have a crab in barrel mentality. I'm not going to support you or cheer you on or elevate you because I want your position. But you don't realize that you elevating me to my position helps me to then pull you up.
Yeah.
And then when I get to that position, I'm not trying to help the ones below me because I'm afraid they're trying to pull me back down. And so if we continue in that space and in that way, we have no chance. So yeah. Engage me, ask me questions about helping. I've done stuff where the national team has gone to Texas for games and we need to find fields and we need to find equipment. And I call a partner who know nothing about, he went to school with me, know nothing about Trinidad and Tobago football, but he helped them and he put things in place. And the administrators, Richard and some of these guys, they're doing their best. I know that they're doing their best with limited resources. Angus with Cole
Yeah.
when he was in the position, Denzel with Cole, Cornell. These guys, yeah, the door's open. They have guys come to Red Bull on a weekly basis to come and see, to come and learn.
Yeah.
Coaches from different clubs up here. I try to do the same for our coaches. Bill Coscantlebury, Errol McFarlane, Anthony Rouget. All these guys have already come to Red Bull and seen, because
Right.
there's no secrets in football. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, okay, the access to the first team will always be a little bit more limited and timely, but from the academy level and what we do and how we structure things, and we're not the perfect model, we are our model, but
Mm-hmm.
at least you could come and take things from there again and do it, right? Like, we have a model
Correct.
as well for the international boys. They go to school, these African boys and South American boys, they go to the prep schools here, and then you get touch points with them. They can't play for your club competitively because of FIFA rules, but for two
Right.
or 3 years, you get them into your training environment for a certain time, and then you could take them to guest play at tournaments. And we have a group going to join us in Panama with our second team preseason, and a group going to Brazil from Plaza Amador. Like, it's being done for so many kids and cultures out there, and we're not
Yeah.
even scratching the surface of what you could do. We have a tournament in Salzburg where you could take guest players every year at U16. That could be one boy from Trinidad and Tobago, one boy
Correct.
from
Yeah.
Ecuador, one boy from, instead of 3 boys from Africa, 2 boys, never Trinidad and Tobago. And that is insane to me, because we have people in clubs that can foster that relationship and could do it. I know
Yeah.
that City FC has a relationship with Atlanta United. I know that there's showcases that I talked to the I talked to the sport company about. We start engaging, we start putting together a format. Again, how I could help secure coaches to come down to look at these players.
Yeah.
You don't even know when the conversation ends. You just realize, wait, 2 months and we in talk, like, why, and
Mm.
so yes, 100%. I would, and behind the scenes I've been doing it.
Mhm.
But and I don't need the publicity. I don't need the notoriety for it. I just want to see it be successful, and it has to
Yeah.
make sense for me.
Yeah.
And I want to see opportunities for our boys, and so if the right people in the right places ever do want to do the outreach, we try to start something with a scouting network internationally. I think Keith Leclerc and some of the guys were behind that.
Yeah.
Um, Noah Powder's dad, Sean, and we
Sean.
had
Sean
something
Powder.
in
Yeah.
place. And then I think they changed TTFA leadership or something. And again, the politics, the political part of it back home, I don't know, and I don't get involved in. I know, like, Selby Brown is a family friend, almost like an uncle from a long time. I know he was doing the Veterans Football Association, and they were running, and people keep telling me about how they choose the leader. I have no clue. Probably don't want to know and get involved in that part, but certainly
Yeah.
if we have the right leaders in place, and there's a way to bridge the gap with the people out here in these spheres of influence, I think it would all go well for football.
All right. So I know we spoke a lot and you gave a lot of information and showing that the doors are open, because I believe personally a lot of people in Trinidad outside of the TTFA obviously don't know about the opportunities that there are. So I definitely hope that this message reaches out and people hear it, and that at some point people reach out to you, people reach out to me, and I contact you. Because, yeah, even if it's on a consulting level or just to give ideas, there's definitely something that you would be able to bring to the table. I mean, I think you should be technical director personally, but that's a different conversation for a different time.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
thank you very much. I appreciate your time and do enjoy the rest of your day. And we're looking forward to hear more things with Royal Mitchell personally, because he's a Trinidadian.
yeah. And again, rule is just one of many. I mean, there's, again, you're blessed to be in uh, a talent rich area like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Northern PA, and the amount of local talent that you have here, second generation now with the passport rule, third
Right.
generation that we're able to tap into. Rule is just one of many. There's more, and you see it now when you have these training camps with the national team. The amount of international players that have been going down looking for an opportunity to represent. Again,
Yeah.
how that is structured, and are they really being given I didn't give him the right chance. I would just leave it at that. Are they? I don't know.
Yeah,
I know
I don't
some.
want to get I don't want to get into that too because yesterday the U17 team dropped. There's one international player.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you can't tell me that all these people. Yeah, that is not a conversation for now.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
understand that.
and I know I had the pleasure of meeting the coach, and we talked a little bit, and great guy, and wants to learn, wants to know, and offered him same thing, access to come up to see what we do and all of that. And I don't get into his selections because I wasn't there enough to know how a kid performed or not or whatever it is. But I would say that when we have these kids coming down, um, and this was since in our time, when somebody was coming from overseas, there was always a little bit of a us versus them mentality. Even guys that grew up there, like I grew up there, and at times you come back and you feel like, wait, but there's a guy I grew up with and I play all my life and act a little different, right? But you have to understand at, at at the most base level of what is, I wouldn't even say best practices, just mediocre practices in football, at a certain level. Some of these kids are coming from places where New York, let's say somebody like Roel Mitchell, or let's say a younger player comes. New York Red Bulls is building or Red Bull New York now as we rebranding, is building $180 million training facility for the club that will open in March. 8 fields. It's like Disneyland. Like I went, I was like, it's too much. Like you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like for kids, sometimes like this is too much. Like especially when you watch that compared to what a kid has home, right? But
Hmm.
back home now, the kid used to have the hunger and the desires. What is why you went to like South America and Africa and the Caribbean and these places to scout talent, and why? Because they had the hunger and the little nastiness and the grit that a North
Hmm.
American kid mightn't have, right? So these kids are coming out of like these situations where there's proper nutrition, there's proper prehab work, post training, like, and then you just drop them into something where 20 men in a room, and like food will come on time, and then you ask them to perform at a level that you want to select them from. So you're not putting them on a playing field. And I heard a comment where somebody was saying, yeah, but now we have to see who have the belly, and football is not about who have the belly and stuff again. It's about like, yeah, let's do the right things and put them in the place to succeed.
Correct.
Yeah, the belly will come out eventually when you're in a hardship and you have to fight and you have to play. But let's start them in a position where you're giving them the opportunity to succeed and showcase themselves.
Yeah.
You can't just say that they don't have enough quality or talent to be able to. I see the level that they're playing at. So they have the quality, they have the talent.
Yeah.
If one who needs being selected, then you'd want to know why. And again, I do get involved in selection. Coaches will see things in a certain way, and they'll always, I didn't get selected for certain teams, and I had to like eat that up and just recalibrate and find a way, understand what the
Yeah.
coach wants, understand what the coach was looking for, and then tweak my game or evolve to be able to then be selected. So that's a part of development and growth as well too. But are you getting feedback when you say, okay, these players aren't good enough? Well, why? Are we having conversations? This is one of the biggest things that my counterpart at Chelsea, his kid found out that he wasn't gonna make the squad he just got removed from a WhatsApp group, right? Like no, hey, let's have a conversation. Oh yeah, you did well in these areas, like a certain evaluation template, like, so that somebody leaves and they understand why. When every player that comes into a club over here, when they leave a trial period or whatever, you have an evaluation as to tell you why. These are that's a basic thing. It doesn't you have to be in depth. It does, but at least you know that they were watching you. Like,
Yeah.
like, and that's some of the complaints I get. Like, oh, I don't even know if they watch me because we went down, and then the guys that you knew were playing 60 minutes, and then the guys who came down were playing 30 minutes. Like, flip that, right? The
Yeah.
guys, you're like, flip that and let's see, and then mix. And again, I don't know enough. This is just feedback I get, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
when a team is selected now, and then you're like, again, I know the coaches. I was able to speak with Barlow. I know Marvin really well. Marvin and I grew up playing together, so Marvin with the under 20s, and yeah, like, and I'm sure there are people in Trinidad that would say the same thing, like better players not. Yeah, that's the age old thing. The best players not getting selected. Everybody would have their own. If you ask 10 of us to pick a team, everybody coming up with, outside of 5 players, maybe everybody coming up with a different team, right? So
True.
so that's why I don't get involved in selection. But at least let's know what the criteria was. Let's know why a player wasn't selected. Be able to answer the question, right? And then
Yeah.
again, accountability. And then once we have that, then yeah, everybody says, all right, we move forward with this group, and you have another chance, and you come again, and we're good. So yeah, structure. It ties all the way back down, right? Like, so
Correct.
why
Correct.
why we in the place that we are? Like, there's certain things that we don't have structurally in place to be able to allow us to have the transparency and the accountability and all of that to succeed.
So yeah, this really was a rich conversation. So I know
Yeah.
there's a lot of points to take away, and I know personally people when they look at it, I would have a lot of conversation with them because they'll be asking me a lot of questions. So be prepared. We might have to do a part two. So
Yeah, it could do part 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever you want. Like I
yeah,
said, I would always anything to champion Trinidad and Tobago football and football in the Caribbean. Again, like I have people from Jamaica and Antigua and stuff asking me to set up showcases with them right now. I see my name pop up on something in Jamaica. I didn't even know the person, Shaq Moore came down, he does his stuff in Tobago. I help him with that. There are
right.
people that want to give back and want to help the agenda, the football. We just need to incentivize it for them to do it, not even from a financial perspective, but from a time perspective. Time is money, and if you're going to spend your time, you want
Yeah,
to make sure that your time is being used well, and you
true.
also need when you put your name to something and your name is being associated with something, you work too hard to build your reputation out here for it to be something that is Vikey Vi. So you
Yeah,
want it
yeah,
to
yeah,
be
yeah.
in the right way. And as I said, if people come and they approach, and I have high standards and high demands of what I would want to be to put my name to anything. But if I see that those things are in place, then yeah, 100%.
Cool. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, man.
Thank you very much. I'll stop the recording now. If you want to stay on and talk a few minutes, we can do that also.
All right, sounds good. Thank you again.
Thanks.